What is the difference between being punk and being a punk?
We are here to talk some punk rock, some music, comics.
Punk culture, DIY shit, anything we want to talk about.
That's what fascinates me. Give me everything. Absolutely everything.
I find that music and comics have always been intertwined.
Muck spout.
Chicks dig it. Don't worry.
Hey, welcome to Muck Spout, episode 8. Got Ben and John with me.
Howdy, guys.
We are brought to you by the Stupid Rad Merch Company.
Woo.
They specialize in shirts, stickers, buttons, and enamel pins, patches, slip mats. I've used them for a few things, and they are pretty great. And that's pretty fun.
They have a fantastic band roster, too, from everything I've seen. Bad Cop, Bomb Pops, a bunch of great bands.
Yeah.
They're the real deal. But I also want to congratulate us on selling out this quickly. We already have a capitalist sponsor. This is fantastic.
I don't have to wear my tube top on the street corner anymore. It's okay. We can fund
right.
this thing.
I shut down my OnlyFans last night.
Yeah.
So
tonight we're going to talk about longevity and evolution as an artist, amongst other things, with our guest Josh Caterer from Smoking Popes. I'm going to bring him on right now, and there he is, the legendary.
Hello.
Caterer.
Hi there.
hey, man.
Hey, what's up, fellas?
How do you feel about the word legendary, Josh? You like it?
Legend. It's a very relative term. You know, it just means that somewhere someone is talking about you.
There you go.
That's true.
Are they saying good things or bad things? I don't know. Legendary is very similar to like notorious.
That's true.
Well, we'll find out in the comment section.
Fair enough. I have a question. As someone who has had a fair amount of success as a, can we say a front man? You know,
Sure.
You're kind of front facing. I would say, I'm a drummer, right? So like, I'm not the guy that absorbs the majority of the interest in a band. What's the value of anonymity, considering that it must be difficult to do that and be like the face of a music project?
Well, fortunately, the level of success that the Popes have achieved only really applies to certain situations. Like we're not a household name, so I don't walk down the street and get recognized. I'll only have people really interested in me at either one of our shows or if I go to a show of a band that's sort of in our genre. Then I'll get recognized. But it doesn't, and that's always nice. You know, it's also, we're not to the level where like there's people who are behaving truly strangely toward me. There used to be a little more of that in the 90s when there was more of an immediate buzz about the band. People got a little weird. Like if you're currently a hot item, people don't know what to do with themselves around you. But I think we've been around long enough where it's just like, yeah, it's that guy.
So what kind of thing happens when people get a little weird? Like, I've always wondered, because I've been in bands that never really got a lot of public attention. It's nice to get props after a show, but it's a different thing to have people kind of like seeking you out in a crowd. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
Where does the line get crossed where you're like, I don't like this no more?
Well, it would usually take the form of like people, either people seeming really nervous when they talk to you, which just makes it hard to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
Because it's like they're nervous as if they're, auditioning for something, or if they have something to lose by saying the wrong thing in this conversation. But usually if you're just talking to a person, nobody feels that way. We're just two people talking. But sometimes it'll take the form of, there's a term, I don't know if it's a term that like a lot of people use, but we heard it somewhere and we use it. There's a certain kind of fan that we call them punishers. Is this a thing you've heard before?
I have not.
No.
The idea being that somebody likes your band so much that they're going to punish you for it. And
Yeah.
you're out there, maybe by your merch table, and somebody just comes up to you and they get right in your face and they just start really enthusiastically giving you the life story of their relationship with your music, and you can just see like the sort of there's a yearning in their eyes. You can tell that this person wants something from you, and they sort of like focus their attention on you, and they monopolize you, and they just won't let you go. They just keep asking you questions, and especially if you get somebody with a few drinks in them, they lose their filter, and you'll be like, I'll be having a conversation with somebody, and then someone else will come up and just step in between and start sort of shouting in my face about how awesome they think I am.
I've seen that when I've been talking to you at a show. I've witnessed that.
Those people, and you're like, this person loves my band, but they're being really unpleasant right now. So we call them a punisher.
It's a good term.
It'll even be like, like if somebody goes out to the merch table and they come back to the back room, and I'll be like, how is it out there? A lot of punishers at the table tonight. Don't go out there.
Well, I have one thing to start by punishing you with.
No, you're not a punisher. We're way past that, Eric.
I was
no time like the present.
I was thinking recently about how when I was 10 years old, my dad would listen to like the Beatles, and the albums would be maybe like 18, 20 years old. Realized the other day with my 10-year-old that sometimes I'll listen to Get Fired.
Yeah.
And it's about to be 30 years old.
Yeah.
Like, I don't really have a question that goes along with that. Just kind of like a wow.
How does it feel to be old?
So
I thought he was saying, how does it feel to be like the Beatles?
Yeah.
Frame it however you want.
Yeah, there you go.
But that's pretty amazing. I mean,
time is really strange. You put out a record and then you just go on with your life, and the next thing you know, it's 30 years old. It does seem strange to me, because that album is older than I was when we started the band and when I recorded the album. But it also seems strange because, like, I still feel like we as a band are like, I feel like we're in the middle of our journey. I don't know. Like I mentioned, time is a weird thing, but I don't know if you guys have this, but you sort of, as you go through life, depending on how old you are, like you sort of envision yourself. Obviously, you don't know exactly when your life is going to end, but you sort of, if all goes well and nothing catastrophic happens, I'm going to be living to be X number of years old. And I've got like sort of X number of really functional years ahead of me.
Mhm.
And, you know, I think that like when I was, 20, I would have said that by the time I was 50, I'd be, on the downward slope of things.
Hmm.
But now that I'm 50 and I like, I follow Mick Jagger on social media, and I see him like he'll post these videos of him like working out to get ready for his upcoming shows and stuff. And I don't know if you've seen those, but just videos of him sort of like in his like home. It looks like a studio, like a dance studio almost that he has, and he's just sort of doing his moves in there, and just kind of running around in circles, doing little kicks and stuff and stretches. And he's like 79.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, 50's in the 20, right?
Well, he's like he's a living example of the principle that as long as you keep moving and you stop doing things to actively destroy yourself, and you sort of like do some basic maintenance on what you've got.
Yeah.
You can be really active and be getting a lot out of life and putting a lot out there still, like, well into your 70s. So all that to sort of illustrate that I feel like we're still in the middle of our story, and we've got as much ahead of us as we do behind almost.
On that
100%.
note, when it comes to the popes, so you had the Smoking Popes, 91 to 98?
Yeah.
And then reunited in 2005 until now. You guys have been around since you came back together almost twice as long as you were together originally now, isn't it? Am I doing that math about right?
Yeah, I'm bad at math, but it feels right what you're saying.
Yeah. That's when I think about that, that's wild to me. Like that you guys have been around that long again.
Me
I remember
too.
I remember a time when there was no Smoking Popes, and there might not be again. And now it's almost like you guys never left because that was so long ago.
Right. But that was, I remember that period right after we got back together, and we were like, we were broken up for 7 years. And then we got back together and we did a tour, just encountering people at the shows who were like just overjoyed because they had been fans of ours for a few years and they thought they would never get to see us play. So it was like a dream come true kind of for them. That was really nice. Maybe we should break up again for 7 years and sort of relive
for the fans, right?
I recently had that with when Jawbreaker came back. Like I had never seen Jawbreaker originally, so that was exciting.
And man, they were broken up for I think like
they were broken up
5 years.
Yeah, like people had kids that could drink now. Like they've been broken up so long.
Yeah.
When you guys split up, did it feel permanent, or did it feel like a just like a kind of a brief? We need to take stock and kind of like separate for a moment.
No, it felt permanent. I was leaving the band. I thought permanently, just because of like a kind of spiritual upheaval that was happening in my life, and I was responding to all of that by just sort of renouncing rock and roll altogether and like devoting myself to my faith, which I'm glad I did. It was a really important time for me, and the kind of like roots that I established in my faith and in my relationship with God are things that have really served me well in my life since then. And so I'm glad I focused on those things without distraction. But after a few years, I realized that it wasn't mutually exclusive. It's not like I have to pick either God or the Smoking Popes. They can coexist with each other in my life.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about this period, when I put out like a call, like if anybody's got any questions for Josh Caterer, let me know. And I want to say maybe, I mean, I didn't get a ton of questions, but I want to say like maybe 90% of them were related to Duvall.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was fun because I always liked Duvall, obviously. And the top one is Duvall still potentially a thing?
Well, Duvall never officially broke up. We just sort of stopped.
Yeah.
So there's always the chance that something's going to happen. Eli and I have occasionally discussed, should we do a kind of a Duvall reunion show where we maybe play Volume and Density in its entirety? And I've brought this up, I don't know, a couple months ago. I talked to Rob Kellenberger on the phone, and we kicked this idea around, and it's something that he's open to as well. But, it would take a fair amount of rehearsal for us to get back in the saddle with that, because we haven't played those songs in like 20 years or something. So will we actually do it? I don't know. I'm not ruling it out, but it's not on the front burner.
I guess also, is there any chance that some of that stuff might bleed more into your Josh Caterer trio stuff that you're doing now? There's some great songs out there that are just kind of sitting.
Oh, thanks. It really warms my heart when people express a desire to hear more Duvall, because I just sort of figured that project fell by the wayside. But
yeah,
I guess people are still interested in that.
I guess for some background for people that don't know anything about Duvall, it was Josh's Christian band after the Smoking Popes. Probably 4 years after Popes split.
Yeah, I think about 3 years after the Popes broke up, I got that band together.
Yeah,
and the idea was to musically pick up where the Popes left off. So stylistically, it's similar to the Popes, but to call it a Christian band just means that I was the lyrics sort of have Christian themes and like some biblical references and themes. It's not like beat you over the head with the Christian message or anything, but
yeah, it's not gospel.
It's not gospel music. It's not like praise and worship music. It's just sort of, it's really pop punk music written by a person with some definite spiritual interests that you can pick up on in the music.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was doing a sampling earlier today of the Duvall stuff, and I actually found, and it might have just been the tracks that I picked up, but it felt like some of the guitar work and stuff was a little heavier almost in some spots, and I was like very happily surprised that it didn't sound like any other kind of like faith-oriented music that I'd heard of. That, like you said, it's not beating you over the head, and the guitar was great, and it was just very driving, and it was a lot of fun. So I give you kudos for making it so much fun. So
yeah, well, I appreciate that, and the fact that it didn't fit into any boxes of other Christian music at the time just meant that it was almost impossible for us to get a record deal.
Yeah.
Because certainly nobody in Christian music knew what to do with Duvall at the time.
Yep.
Yeah.
But, also a lot of non-Christian labels were also like, so what are you doing? But so we ended up putting it out on Asian Man. Mike Park has always been a friend and a big supporter of, he's just a supporter of music and the music scene, and
he's definitely had a love for Chicago.
Yeah,
like, he's put out a lot of great Chicago albums with Tuesday.
He really has, and he's still doing it out of his mom's garage.
Yeah, pretty amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
You want to play a tune, Josh?
Sure.
Cool. Let me put you solo on the screen and let you do your thing.
Should I play a Duval song maybe, since we've been talking about Duval?
That would be great.
This is one that I've also done a version of it with my solo band in a slightly different time signature, but I'll give you the Duval time signature of this one. It's called Racine. Plastic pieces falling down the chute, and I am counting them like trees. Everything's green through the tinted window of the train up to Racine. In a few more hours, I'll be punching out and going home. But until then, I might look like I'm standing here, but I'm really on that train to Racine, where my true love stays. Racine, just a few more days, and I'll see her there again. In the darkness of my room, I close my eyes and drift into a dream. She is waiting for me at the station. She is beautiful. In a few more hours, I'll be waking up and punching in. But until then, I might look like I'm lying here, but I'm really on that train to Racine, where my true love stays. Racine, just a few more days, and I'll see her there again. I will see her there again, and my plastic world will melt into whatever shape she molds me. When she holds me, I'm a man, not a part of this machine by which I'm standing here pretending I'm not standing here. I'm not standing here at all. No, 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 no. Everything's green through the tinted window of the train up to Racine. In a few more hours, I'll be punching out and going home. But until then, I might look like I'm standing here, but I'm really on that train to Racine, where my true love stays. Racine, just a few more days, and I'll see her there again. Talking about Racine, where my true love stays. Racine, just a few more days, and I'll see her there again. I will see her there again.
Woo!
That was,
Thank you.
first of all, that was incredible. Second of all, that tripped me out a little bit. My father is from Racine, Wisconsin.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he was a Lutheran pastor.
Okay.
It's weird that.
But you didn't live in Racine at all when you were a kid?
No, I grew up in Canada. So my father met my mom here in Ontario, and they got married, and didn't last long. But yeah, he moved back to Wisconsin. But it was just strange that the first song you would pick is like the one town that I actually know from my childhood. It was a little trippy.
Coincidence?
It's a beautiful song.
I think not.
What's that?
Coincidence? I think not.
I agree.
Awesome.
So how long have you been like a musician?
Oh man, probably like 43 years.
Wow.
Because
I-
I started playing piano even before I was 10. I think I started taking lessons when I was 6 or 7 years old.
Wow. So how did see there for me as a drummer, there was a moment when I knew that this is the thing I was gonna do. Like,
Yeah.
how old were you when you had that moment? Or did you have that moment?
Oh yeah, I was probably like 11 when I realized that. Because that's
Yeah. Did
around
you
the
ever
time that's around the time I started playing guitar. And here, I'm going to talk to you and let my dog out at the same time.
cool.
And I just knew, even at that age, that like music was something that I was so passionate about. I was like almost obsessed with it.
Mhm.
Were your parents musicians, Josh?
My dad played the guitar a little bit. He was not a professional musician. And he wasn't that great at it. He was just competent enough to sort of play, like sit around the house and play. He had like a nylon string acoustic that he would get out sometimes. And I remember like probably some of my earliest memories in life are of my brothers and I standing around in the living room in a sort of semicircle around my dad when he was trying to play guitar, and he had these books of like sheet music, just of what were at the time like contemporary songs. Like one of them I remember was Night Moves by Bob Seger.
Love that song.
Yeah, it's a really good song, but like, my dad like playing and singing Night Moves, and we're just kind of standing around joining in. Night Moves. And of course, it would be years before I would grasp what that song actually was about.
Yeah.
Like, with points.
Would have been
all
awkward
around,
if he explained it to you right then and there, though, right? Like,
with points all around, sitting way up high. I had no idea what that was about.
So, Josh, as I was thinking about speaking to you, I was thinking about some of the things that I heard, like as a early Popes fan, that I've never really heard addressed. They're not really awkward things. I'm not putting you on the spot with anything here. But
Okay.
So I grew up around like the Homewood area, and Park Forest and all that. There was a venue in Homewood called Off the Alley.
Yeah.
That you guys played. There was always the story that ran around Homewood that Green Day was at the record store at Off the Alley and saw you guys play, and that helped launch you guys to Capitol Records.
Oh.
Doesn't sound like you knew anything about that.
I did not know about that.
Yeah.
That sounds like it might be apocryphal.
yeah.
I mean, I know that Green Day did discover us after our first album came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they came through Chicago on the tour for Dookie, they asked us to open for them.
Wow.
When when they became like the biggest band in the world. And so
Right.
our connection with them was a very big part of launching our career, because it drew a lot of interest from like major labels at the time. But we did not meet them at Off the Alley in Homewood. If they were there, I had no knowledge of it.
Yeah.
And you'd think that they would come up and introduce
Right.
themselves.
They're Green Day. They
Yeah.
could do that.
Yeah. So I'm inclined to think that that's not how it happened. I think that they just found out about our band through like Maximum Rock and Roll magazine or whatever punk outlet they were getting their information from at the time. You know, they sort of, at least at that time, probably had their finger on the pulse of things, and they were picking up some records that were like flying under the radar, which ours was one. And so,
Plus, they had their own record label from the get-go, pretty much, haven't they? Lookout, isn't that theirs?
they did. That's kind of, that's the thing that really connected us with them in a way that started a what you might call a bidding war at the time, because their managers contacted us and asked if we wanted to be the first band on this label that they were starting up. And we didn't end up doing that. We ended up going with Capitol Records instead, but it all got
What was the
started by
calculus
Green
there? Was there a reason why you chose them over the other?
You know, we met with a handful of different labels at the time. Warner Brothers, Atlantic.
So there was already a buzz about you guys at this point.
It was the first people we ever talked to were the Green Day managers. But then after that, once I got a call, it was like Green Day's manager called me up at home. They somehow got my home number and called me up and asked, you know, if we were interested in doing that. And I was like, well, we're going to have to think about it. And I put down the phone, told my brothers that had happened. And then we immediately called Joe Shanahan at the Metro, who owns the Metro in Chicago, because, you know, we had played there and I knew that he was friends with, you know, bands like Smashing Pumpkins, and that he had helped certain bands, you know, get their careers going. But he had never managed anybody before, but he just was sort of like a good guy to know. And he had told us, if you ever need anything, let me know. So we called him and we told him that I had gotten this phone call, and, you know, we asked him to manage us and to try to navigate whatever other interest we could get from other labels. So he set it up to where we were meeting with other labels and stuff. And then out of all the ones that we talked to, we went with Capitol because it was the smallest of the major labels at the time. Like, we felt like, you know, on Warner Brothers or Atlantic, there was more of a chance of us getting lost in the shuffle. But Capitol was didn't have as many bands on their roster at the time. They had Radiohead, had just put out, I think, The Bends.
Yeah.
And a couple other bands. But also, I can't deny that part of it is that when we went and took a tour of the Capitol building, we just sort of fell in love with it. Like, to be in that magical building and to see, like, there's a recording studio kind of on the ground floor of it, which is where Sinatra used to do some of his like big band recordings, and they showed us that studio. And Sinatra was he was still alive at the time. He was like I remember he was about to celebrate his 80th birthday, and they were going to do a special,
I remember watching it.
Sinatra 80th thing. And so I was like, oh my goodness, we could be label mates with Frank Sinatra. Like,
Yeah.
we just sort of couldn't pass that up.
Yeah.
We were label mates with Frank Sinatra.
So it was Sinatra that did it for you then. That's amazing.
Sort of, yeah.
Very cool.
And then the other thing that popped up was I think I remember hearing you say this, but if it's not true, then I didn't. Um, when you guys did a cover of Pure Imagination on Destination Failure,
Yeah.
which is quite beloved, still to this day by fans. And I seem to remember you when that was being made. I remember you saying that you were actually pulling for the Golden Ticket song.
Um, we wanted to do a song from that movie, and because so many of the songs in that movie are awesome, and I remember we did try to put together an arrangement of Golden Ticket, and I think we might have tried to do one for Cheer Up Charlie, because that's also a wonderful, beautiful song. But just none of those other ones clicked the way that Pure Imagination did.
Did being on Capitol, is that what gave you guys the access to record a song like that? Or is it, I don't know anything about legalities of cover songs on your albums, but
No, you can cover somebody's song as long as you don't have to get permission from them.
Yeah, you just
You
have
can
to credit
record
them, right?
You just have to credit them, and then you have to be paying the songwriters whatever the going rate for for songwriting royalties are.
okay.
Which is something that like ASCAP or BMI does all that. I think the only time you have to get permission is if you're going to use somebody's song, like in a TV show or a movie,
Okay.
or some other format. Then you can't do that without their permission. But just to record a cover of it, you can just go ahead and do it.
Cool.
But I found out years later. I'm thinking this was when the album "Stay Down" came out. So what was that? Like 2008 or 2009. We played a show in Los Angeles, and Morrissey came to the show. And we had done a tour with him where we opened for him for several weeks. But on that tour, we really didn't talk to him very much because he was just kind of being like reclusive. Like he wouldn't come into the building very much. Like, he would just come in like 5 minutes before his set time. He would play and then leave. So, but then, and that was like I don't remember what year that was, but a few years after that, he came to see us play in Los Angeles and came backstage and sat down, and we ended up having a longer conversation with him than we'd ever had before. And one of the things that he told us was that he had had the opportunity to meet Anthony Newley, who was the co-writer of Pure Imagination. He co-wrote all the songs for that soundtrack. And when he, he knew in advance that he was going to be, it was sort of an arranged meeting between him and Anthony Newley. And so he brought to that meeting his vinyl copy of Pure Imagination, of our version of Pure Imagination, and he gave it to Anthony Newley.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. And he said then he had a follow-up phone conversation with Anthony Newley, a couple months later, shortly before Mr. Newley passed away.
Oh.
And asked him what he thought of the Smoking Pope's version of Pure Imagination. And apparently Mr. Newley said he thought it was hilarious.
Hilarious.
Yeah. Which Morrissey wasn't quite sure if we were going to take that as an insult or be upset about knowing that, that Anthony Newley was like amused by our version of it. But I am absolutely delighted that happened and that I found out about it.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's awesome on a lot of levels. I'm really grateful to have had that connection with him. I would have been upset if he was like if he said, I think it sucks. But for him to say it's hilarious, I do actually take that as a compliment.
That's great.
For sure.
I was gonna prompt you to do another song, but since you mentioned "Stay Down," it's kind of become a lost album. Like, it had a very short release on CD, and it's never hit vinyl.
Yeah.
Is there any chance of anything happening with that album again?
Stay Down?
Yeah, it was a good album.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I could see us reissuing that at some point.
It was
Maybe
The Corner. That was on there, right?
The Corner is on
Yeah,
there.
that was a good one.
You've got If You Don't Care is on there.
Yep.
Grab Your Heart and Run is on there.
Yeah.
Do you feel comfortable playing one of the songs from that album?
Oh,
Sure. How about If You Don't Care?
cool.
Sounds great.
Let me get you.
I mean, I don't care.
If you don't care, I don't care. We don't belong together 'cause we don't belong anywhere. If you're not sure, I'm not sure what all these tears are falling for. Let's decide not to care anymore. Awake in a whitewashed tomb, awaiting the hand of doom, with our tickets to some distant patch of sky, employing a few choice words. We flutter like captive birds, finally free, but still afraid to fly. If you don't care, I don't care. We don't belong together 'cause we don't belong anywhere. If you're not sure, I'm not sure what all these tears are falling for. Let's decide not to care anymore. Assuming a plaintive pose for reasons that neither knows. We are both convinced we'll make it out alright. Astoundingly still unclear, we stare at a faceless fear. As hand in hand we fall into the light. Oh, if you don't care, I don't care. We don't belong together 'cause we don't belong anywhere. If you're not sure, I'm not sure what all these tears are falling for. Let's decide not to care anymore. Employing a few choice words, we flutter like captive birds, finally free but still afraid to fly. Oh, if you don't care, I don't care. We don't belong together 'cause we don't belong anywhere. You're not sure, I'm not sure what all these tears are falling for. Let's decide not to care anymore. Oh, let's decide not to care anymore. Oh, let's decide not to care anymore.
Woo!
Woo!
Thank you. Thank you.
You're, I got to tell you, man, you're a fantastic singer, a fantastic lyricist.
Thanks.
And I'm curious, like, how does the songwriting process work for you? Like, does it start with words? Does it start with a riff, or is it like a collaborative thing where you work with other people?
I don't usually work with other people, and I usually start with music. I usually will kind of like it usually happens one of two ways. I'll pick up a guitar and start messing around, and I'll come up with like a chord pattern and sort of melody that I'm humming, and I'll put music together, and then I'll fill in the lyrics later. Or I'll be listening to music, usually in the car. Oftentimes I'll be listening like to the 40s channel on Sirius XM, and something about the song that I'm hearing kind of like gives me an idea for a melody or like a phrase, a little lyrical phrase. And so I'll like either start singing it along with what I'm listening to, or I'll turn that off for a second and start working on it in my head.
It's wild the different ways people work. I remember Mike Fellenly, your drummer, was telling, not that I needed to tell you who Mike Fellenly was, but everybody,
Right, but for the listening audience.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
he was telling me before about Rivers Cuomo's writing, the way he writes songs. And basically, the way I understand it is that Rivers Cuomo has like a spreadsheet of clever little quick lines that he pulls together a song from. Like he just kind of comes up with as he's going. It's just wild to me the variety of ways that people come up with.
That's kind of like the Mad Libs way of writing a song. I like that.
Totally, dude.
Well, sometimes when you're listening to Weezer, think about it.
I kind of wish we would do that live, right? Like, wouldn't that be awesome? You go to a show and they're like, okay, I need a noun and a verb and a place.
Oh man, that's like sort of a great idea for
Improv rock? I'm into it, man.
yeah.
Yeah, we can call the band Yes and.
Yes, I love it. Oh man, that's $1 million idea.
Hell yeah, dude. Head to Toronto. We'll figure it out.
Okay.
So I guess one of the questions I'd have is, with such a long career, from the beginning, your very first Smoking Popes album that you wrote, to what you're working on right now, how is the lyrical content changed, and what has changed about your process or anything? What has evolved during that time frame?
Yeah. The earlier, the earlier stuff was a little more rooted in an immediate attempt to get girls.
The root of all musicians, I
Yeah,
think, at the beginning of the career. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so some of those early ones were just written in order to impress women in general, or in order to try to get the attention of like certain young ladies. There was a certain urgency to like not having my romantic situation figured out yet. And then I found, of course, the stuff I was writing for Duvall, I was mostly like thinking about transcendent truths and spiritual concepts. And then getting the Popes back together and writing for the Popes again. I feel like it's sort of split between, some variation of love songs, and more like kind of existential problems.
Hmm.
Like I've had some of the songs I've written are just sort of about, I don't know, even stuff that I'm working on now, probably because I have spent some time recently just in my own study reading through the book of Ecclesiastes.
It's a heavy one.
It's a pretty heavy one, and it's very existential, and it's all sort of about the apparent meaninglessness of life and the attempt to sort of embrace the living of it and to find joy in that, even while acknowledging that it's fleeting and the kind of melancholy that comes from that. So that's, I sort of work that into my writing these days because it's interesting to me. and if I write some of the songs where I'm addressing like romantic themes, I'm doing that more as, I've been married for like it's coming up on 25 years now.
Congrats.
And yeah, so but I don't think that it's necessarily an interesting songwriting exercise to just sort of use songs as a way of like working through, every time my wife and I have an argument about like, who's gonna do the dishes or whatever, So it's more, I feel like my writing about those things is a little more kind of like bird's eye view, thinking about those things conceptually.
I have noticed over the last handful of years more so, just personally knowing you, and then just some of your music, that you've been more involved in like politically thinking. And I noticed during COVID, with the mask wearing and stuff, you're a big proponent of that, and for some reason that was a political thing. And then just
That's what I was gonna say. Like the fact
it
that
doesn't sound particularly
wearing a mask,
political, but
yeah,
unfortunately, and
Yeah,
but it's
and
even gotten.
the fact that I like get vaccinated for a disease, and that would be like a controversial thing to do and perceived as a political statement is sort of mind-blowing in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because I used to get vaccinated for things like, when I was going to school, like you'd have to get
I remember taking Hep B shots at school in my gym.
Yeah, it was not controversial at all to get vaccinated for things. So the fact that people were trying to make it a political thing was something that I just rejected outright.
I could be wrong, but going back through your library, I don't know that anything was very political up until maybe Little Lump of Coal. Is there anything you could think of that was more politically?
Honestly, like, I have the luxury of not being very interested in politics, which maybe is a kind of a privileged way to go through life. But up until 2016, whoever was president, I mean, like, I voted, but like I didn't really pay attention to it. Like you remember, like the president would only be in the news like every once in a while if he was doing something like oh, the president's over in China right now, like doing something particularly out of the ordinary. But you would go for weeks, I would anyway, without ever thinking about the president of the United States.
Yeah,
I've always felt like politicians and drummers are very similar in that if they're doing their job right, you don't really notice them.
Exactly. Even if you didn't necessarily agree with all the policies of the person who was in office, you at least had the basic assumption that they weren't going to like burn the house down.
Yeah, like marginally competent was what you were aiming for,
They were
right?
just going to sort of mind the store until 2016, and then it was like, wait a minute, it seems like a lot of things we take for granted are actually at stake here, because the guy that was at the helm seemed like I thought it was pretty clear that he was not actually looking out for the interest of the country or trying to preserve democracy, which ultimately, with the things that we saw on January 6th, it became painfully clear that this guy was not a friend of democracy. He was very willing to overturn elections and the voice of the people in order to install himself in power. But like even leading up to that, like when he pulled America out of the Paris Climate Agreement, that was something that I found extremely upsetting. So much
for
so
me,
that
it was the fire and fury statement with North Korea. I was like, that is not something you play with.
Yeah. There were things going on there that I was like, this is not acceptable. I felt like I can't keep my head in the sand. Anybody who has even one eye open has to be alarmed about what's going on right now. And I had never written specifically about political things, but my concern about the planet inspired me to write a song in response to the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. And then we released it as a single and made a point of saying that all of the profits from the digital single were going to go toward a nonprofit organization that was like fighting for, working for, to try to fight climate change. And I don't know. It was definitely new ground for us to be kind of like politically active, but I felt like we were forced into it by the times,
Right.
I have a question on that. Now I've been political for a very long time. If that's an adjective you can use as a character trait, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've been politically interested, I would say, for a very long time. And I was always concerned about things in ways that most people didn't seem to see things as a priority. And in retrospect, a lot of times I was worried about things unnecessarily. But there has been a distinct shift in the way that not only politics are done, but the way that people perceive the political realm and what is in it and what is not in it. And I'm curious, how do you think that you became political, or that politics sort of invaded your personal space?
I think that I became more aware of politics, and in retrospect, I should have been more politically aware before that. I think that you had the right idea of like actually paying attention to politics.
I always felt like it was boiling frogs,
Yeah. It took Trump to sort of like frighten me into actually caring about politics or paying attention to it. And one thing that was, I don't know, maybe this is a whole can of worms for me to open this up, and I don't want to dig too far into it. But,
Let's go.
But up to that point, I had never thought about Christianity in political terms. For me, it was like a purely personal and a purely like existential thing. Like I came to faith in Christ in order to address the human predicament of mortality, and that's the lens through which I saw Christianity, which I think, in truth, that's what Christianity ultimately is. But the thing that I was unaware of, because I didn't go around talking to other Christians about politics,
Right.
It wasn't until 2016 that I realized that most of the other Christians around me were like diehard Republicans who bought into a entirely right-wing set of worldviews and opinions about a variety of social issues, many of which I did not agree with, and it was sort of disorienting to me.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know how. I feel like I'm in, I belong to a club where I inadvertently don't agree with a lot of the club rules.
It's like you've been going to the same bar for like 20 years, and then one day you go in and you're like, everybody's wearing swastikas, and they're like, yeah, we've always been wearing swastikas. You're like, hold on, wait a second.
Or like I feel like I think of it this way sometimes. Like I'm sitting around in a movie theater watching It's a Wonderful Life, and then like halfway through the movie, I discover a lot of the people around me are actually rooting for Mr. Potter.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that really freaks me out. And I don't know how our sort of value systems have reached entirely different conclusions. So it's been interesting the past, handful of years to kind of come to terms with that, to sort of like find a connection. And I know, like, some people as a result of that would say, well, forget it. Like, I'm not a Christian anymore, but like, I'm not going to do that. And I'm also not going to discount the faith of the people around me, because I know that a lot of people that I disagree with politically are people who believe as strongly as I do in the things about Jesus that make me a Christian. So we share certain like deeply held religious convictions. But I think that the way that the world is now, or the way that our country is now, is that we are being told more and more that people that we disagree with politically are actually enemies, and people that we cannot have any common ground with, because they're on the other side of a fight. And that's the idea that I've been kind of trying to reject over the past few years, because I find myself being the political outlier in churches that I'm involved in. But like, okay, we have to work through that, because we do have common ground on some very important things.
Yeah, and you show up to the same place every Sunday.
Yeah, I at least in theory, I believe that people who vote differently should be able to worship together. Certainly. And so I've been trying to put that into practice.
Very cool. Josh, do you have a little bit more time with us? Or
I do.
Okay. I know I told you about 8:00, and we're a little bit over. I just want to make sure you're good.
Yeah, I would like to. I've got another song I'd like to play, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Nice. I would love that. Okay, let me kick us out. Oh, you want to talk for a second? Or you want us to kick you? Okay. Get him to the solo.
Because this is just to get into like shameless self-promotion territory. I have a new song that I just released as a single that I would that I'm kind of excited about. There you go. You got the cover of it right up there. The song is called When I Woke Up on Christmas Day. It just came out as a digital single, I don't know, last week or something. And it's not a specifically religious Christmas song, but it is sort of it is sort of a song that acknowledges like a kind of utopian idea that is vaguely biblical, because I've noticed that people who are not religious, people who are atheists, I've known some of them who love Christmas and just think that there's something kind of meaningful and special about the Christmas season that they love. And I was thinking about what is that? Why would a religious holiday appeal to people in that way? And it occurred to me that it probably has to do with the way that Christmas encourages people to imagine the world as it ought to be rather than the way that it is. And to people just kind of in their spirit, like when people talk about the Christmas spirit, I think the Christmas spirit really is, for a brief period of time in December, going around like acting like the way that we should actually treat each other. People are leaning more in that direction. And so I sort of wrote a song from that point of view of like, what if the world was really as it was supposed to be? And here's the song. When I woke up on Christmas Day, the war had ended overnight. Soldiers all laid down their arms with no more reason left to fight. Fear had fled from all our hearts, and dark was overcome by light. The song of love was ringing out when I woke up on Christmas Day. When I woke up on Christmas Day, the scales had fallen from our eyes. The dream of true equality had finally been realized. Nations all embraced as one, and truth had triumphed over lies. The song of hope was ringing out when I woke up on Christmas Day. Christmas Day, the world was all as it should be. Justice for the long oppressed, every prisoner set free. The voice of every tribe and tongue, united in sweet harmony. The song of joy was ringing out when I woke up on Christmas Day. Woke up on Christmas Day. When I woke up on Christmas Day. When I woke up on Christmas Day.
Woohoo!
Nice.
Love it.
Thank you. So I released
As a
that
Canadian,
I released that as a Josh Caterer song. It's not a Smoking Pope song.
You recorded that with John and
John, yeah.
John
John
San
Juan. John San Juan on bass. and John Perrin on drums.
There's the.
Wow, you're so prepared.
I try.
He's amazing, right?
Yeah, very professional.
As a Canadian, I thoroughly appreciate your approach to the Christmas spirit because I've always felt that, like, you know, Canadians are known for their politeness.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like the reason we're so polite is because it is a cold, lonely winter if you're not friendly. And
Yeah.
like, you learn quick. You say something rude, it's like the blizzard for you, buddy. So
Yeah.
I think the Christmas spirit is also like kind of self-preservation when you live in a cold climate, you know?
Right, because you don't want to get kicked out of somebody's house.
That's right.
But Josh, we've talked through a lot of your history, a lot of your different projects. If you look back, are there any songs that you wish you had not written?
Oh, no, I don't think so.
I can't think of any that I expect you to say. I was just curious. I wasn't setting you up for anything there.
No, on the contrary, I wish I had written more songs.
Ah.
I wish there were, we took 7 years off, and there could be like 3 more Smoking Popes albums in there than there are.
Do you ever go back to old demos and recycle anything? I know I've heard some songs through Eli or Mike over time, like from way back, that were really great little songs that nobody's ever heard.
Eli he keeps all these things, and sometimes he sends them to me. He just sent me one recently that is a song that we were demoing for the Stay Down album that didn't make it on. I'm not sure why we didn't include it on there, because we like the song. We think that it's pretty good. So there's a pretty good chance that it'll be on the next record.
Cool.
It's called Never in a Million Years. So if you see that on our album that's going to come out in 2024, there's a song called Never in a Million Years, and it's left over from like 2008.
Awesome. Is there anything else you could say about the new album, or is it too early to get into?
It's really too early. Like, we haven't recorded anything. I've just been demoing stuff with Mike. I go down these days because Eli and Matt both have young kids, and so it's hard for us to get together, all 4 of us. So the way that we've been doing it is I'll get together with Mike and I'll demo the rough outline of the song that I have, and then we send that to Matt and Eli, and they're going to listen to it and sort of like work on their individual parts, so that when we all get together, we'll all get in on it, and it will evolve into something else. But
so when you started getting together with Mike to do new demos and do this sort of thing again, how did that feel? Because that's got to be quite a throwback, because you and Mike did this stuff way back, the 2 of you guys, kind of, didn't you? I remember hearing some demos that you and Mike worked on together.
We did back, especially during the period. There was a period in the 90s when I lived at Mike's parents' house with him, and he had like a 4-track set up in the basement, and we would go down and just demo things. And so some of the stuff for Born to Quit was demoed down there with he and I. The difference is that back then we were demoing like at 2 a.m, smoking cigarettes and drinking Mountain Dew. And now there's no Mountain Dew involved.
Diet Coke for Mike. Right?
Diet Coke for Mike. I don't smoke anymore, and we're demoing at about 6 p.m. And
respectable.
That's it.
What would you say are like the differences in how songs develop if you're doing it sort of more isolated with every individual kind of contributing things in a more piecemeal fashion, as opposed to doing it all in a room together?
I think that I think that it kind of ends up in the same place.
Yeah.
It's just that we weren't all in the room for the parts of it where like I'm like making kind of structural decisions about, like where the bridge should be, or like what the transition should be from the verse into the chorus. Because I usually come up with all that stuff. It's just that now, like, I'm coming up with it separately instead of coming up with it in the same room as those other guys.
Yeah.
Sounds maybe more efficient.
It's more efficient this way. Yeah.
Yeah. But the dynamic hasn't evolved or changed in any way. It's kind of the same thing.
It's basically the same thing.
That's cool.
We just don't have as much disposable time to get together and do it. So it helps that when we do get together, we already have the blueprint of what this song is supposed to look like. But
for sure,
I feel like everybody over the years, everybody has become more nuanced in their approach to the instrument that they play. So the thing that people are bringing to the table is more of a thumbprint, like on the, when we did Into the Agony, there was some stuff that, I'm writing like the basic kind of words, melody, basic chord structure of the song. But then Eli brought some stuff to the table that was some really tasty atmospheric guitar stuff that was definitely took the songs to another level and was definitely like a progression from where he was previously at, which I feel like looking back, you can see that happening, I guess, on all of our parts, but
perhaps the contrast is more stark because you're listening to things in like it's not happening in real time in the same way. So you're able to see the changes happen a little more.
Right. So I'll be living
like
with the idea of a song for a while. And then, when Eli gets his hands on it and sort of puts a guitar part on it that makes it feel different, I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't realize that was missing from the song, but it was. Now I could never tolerate the song without it.
Right.
That's awesome. So I guess we're really quick. The Josh Caterer trio, that these guys, that's been another more recent thing for you. Although going on like 3 years now almost. That's kind of
right. We started in 2020 during the
magical
lockdown.
year.
That was a really fun project. Like watching you guys live stream at a couple different venues. With the it was cool because you were recording it for an album like in that space, so it was just cool though. Like watching it was like watching an album come together. Only way more interesting than watching an actual album come together, because I've seen
right.
that
Right, a
way less Mountain Dew
album is super boring to watch.
I remember telling people that when I would go when you would record Duval, and I was like, we had a lot of fun, but it's a long day. Of the same different guitar parts and stuff for the same song over and over again. I think so.
Right.
Yeah, there's been many times, particularly the last album that the band I'm currently in was recording. I had a couple people ask me like, "Was it like writing music?" And I'm like, honestly, it's like two people yelling. We do it 4 times, or we do it 5 times for like 10 minutes until we finally figure it out, and then like, it's just like arguing about how many times we line things up, or do we do the bridge before this or after this, and we try it all out, and then it's messy. It's like throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks a fair amount. But no one wants to see how the sausage is made.
Where did this trio come from? Like, how did that kind of happen?
Where did what?
That you three, like, how did you three end up pulling together during COVID when nobody could get together?
Well, yeah. So everything closes down during the summer of 2020, and all gigs are canceled, and everybody is just climbing the walls, and I'm losing my mind just like everybody else is, like getting really restless. And then I noticed that this place in Chicago called the Hideout started having these virtual shows where a band would go in and play to an empty club, and they would just live stream it. And I saw that, and I was like, all right, that's cool, and I want to do one of those. But I instantly just felt like that wasn't going to be a Pope's thing. It was going to be an opportunity to do something else. Like, it just felt to me like some other thing that was happening while the Popes were in lockdown. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get together with a couple other musicians and get like a solo, just put together a COVID specific solo project. And I thought of, my friend John Perrin, who I had known for years, but we'd never played together in a band. I had just seen, like, he was in a band called the Love Shots that opened for the Popes a couple times, and then I had seen him play with the Western Elstons, and I knew that he played with NRBQ, so like I just super respected him as a musician, and I wanted to play with him. And I was like, well, if he's willing to get together, this could be my opportunity. Same thing with John San Juan. I was familiar with Hush Drops, and I knew some of his solo stuff, and I knew he was a very gifted musician, but I'd never played with him. So I called those two guys up and just asked if they wanted to get together, and if either of them had a practice space that was big enough to accommodate social distancing while we practiced. And so there was a lot of like getting together, with masks on, and like trying to stay away from each other and stay in different corners of the room while we practiced. And those guys kept their masks on, but I would take mine off to sing and put it back on, and that sort of thing. But at least it was, we're doing something. I've found, like, even during the times when the Popes have been inactive for various reasons, I always have to be doing something. I think that's why I ended up putting Duval together. And like, there was another point where the Popes kind of were taking a little bit of a break, and I started up a blues band. Yeah. Because I just don't like to not be creating new music. So that's what this was. It was just me being restless. Yeah. And those guys, the two Johns, had not been in a band together before, but when they started playing together, almost immediately, they just locked in so perfectly with each other that it felt to me like they had been playing together for years, but they're separately so talented and so intuitive that they just quickly became this super tight, powerful rhythm section that is a joy to play with. And it's different. It's different than the Popes. Their style is very different. A lot of my trio stuff ends up being more, I don't know. It's not, I don't know how you describe it. It's not quite like the Popes. The playing is a little more like improvisational, and the way that those guys play is they're almost like jazz musicians. The way that they're always looking to fill in the spaces with like little flourishes and interesting things.
Yeah, that was actually you were the first band that I actually went and saw as COVID ended.
Yeah.
That was a great time. So I wanted to mention you also have a thing going on now with Downright. I don't know if you want
Yes.
to plug that. I probably should have asked you ahead of time, but now it's too late.
Oh, well, that's okay. We can just quickly say that if anyone is interested in commissioning a custom written song from me, you can do that through Downright.
Cool.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done a bunch of them so far, and they're always really fun to do. Like, people will say, "Hey, I want to order a song for my wife. It's coming up on our 10th anniversary, and I want to give her we're both Pope's fans, and I want to give her a special gift. So here's her name, and here's some details about our sort of relationship, like where we met, and here's her favorite color or whatever." And I just incorporate all that stuff into the song, and
It's
it's
great.
really fun.
It's fun.
So you're already doing the improv rock thing. That's cool.
Sort of, yeah, sort of.
Do you wanna hit us with another Christmas song and then we wrap, or?
Oh,
Yeah,
like
something.
what?
I know I had suggested the Christmas waltz, which is Sinatra.
Oh,
I've heard you do that before, and I think it's pretty fantastic. If you're into
Okay.
that.
Yeah,
Cool.
I can try it.
Then I'll pitch you.
I haven't sung this one in a while. Hopefully I remember all the words. Does it start with frosted window panes?
It does.
Frosted window panes, candles gleaming inside, painted candy canes on the tree. Santa's on his way. He's filled his sleigh with things for you and for me. It's that time of year when the world falls in love. Every song you hear seems to say Merry Christmas. May your New Year dreams come true. And this song of mine in 3/4 time, wishing you and yours the same thing too. And this song of mine in 3/4 time, wishing you and yours the same thing too.
Woo!
Okay, you remembered it.
Damn, you're good.
I remembered it. Barely.
So we came full circle on Sinatra.
Oh, totally, yeah.
And I wanted to mention again, Get Fired turns 30 next year.
Yep, we're doing a reissue of it.
Will there be any new songs added, or not that it's not enough for it to be reissued, but
We couldn't find any like demos or anything. It's just the album remastered. It's got, some different liner notes. I wrote some new stuff for the liner notes of it.
Cool.
I wrote a little paragraph for each song.
Nice.
So there's kind of I have something to say about every track on the record, but there's no new tracks on it.
Cool. I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about Let 'Em Die.
Yeah.
There was always this thing going back and forth on the internet, whether that was cows or cheerleaders. So I'll be interested to see what your take on it is.
Cows or cheerleaders? All right.
Those are the
do
things I
have
remember.
there is a story about that, but it's in there.
Okay.
I'll let you read it when it comes out.
It's like the old commercials, read the book.
Right.
Dianetics.
Exactly.
Piqued our interest. All right.
Yeah.
That's a fun tease. Oh, you guys got anything else?
No, I think that's
I'm not gonna lie, I've got a ton, but we're approaching 90 minutes, so I think we'll have to do this again another time.
Yeah. It's been great talking to you guys. Thanks for having me on.
This has been
Yeah.
great.
Thanks for coming, man.
fantastic. Thank you.
Cool.
Cool. And with that, I'm gonna wrap the show. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben and John, for being here, and Josh. It's fantastic.
Thank-
And